How do you educate yourself about CBD and lung cancer? Where can you find the latest research? And how do you know if you should use CBD? I'm Diane Mulligan.
And I'm Jordan Sherman. These questions and more in this edition of Lung Cancer Foundation of America's Hope with Answers podcast.
And I certainly, as a patient, would not stop my chemotherapy or immunotherapy or radiation or surgery just to take a cannabinoid. I would definitely talk to their oncologist, their clinical pharmacist that they're working with in the oncology environment to help navigate that scenario.
Lung cancer is a tough topic. It's a disease that affects patients, families, friends, co-workers. But first, it's a disease that affects people. The Hope with Answers Living with Lung Cancer podcast brings you stories about people living, truly living with lung cancer. The researchers dedicated to finding new breakthrough treatments, and others who are working to bring hope into the lung cancer experience.
Today, we are talking with Dr. Jacquelyn Bainbridge to get the latest information in the research surrounding CBD, cannabis, and lung cancer.
Dr. Bainbridge is a clinical pharmacist at the Skaggs School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences at the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus.
Dr. Bainbridge, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do?
Happy to. Thank you so much. So I'm a clinical pharmacist at the Skaggs School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences here on the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus. I do clinical research, and that's part of my passion. Currently, we're working on many cannabinoid or cannabis clinical trials.
Dr. Bainbridge, what is CBD oil exactly, and how would it affect lung cancer patients?
So CBD oil can mean many different things. So CBD oil could be our FDA approved product, which is Epidiolex, because that is produced in sesame oil, and that is cannabidiol or CBD. There also could be oils that you get from a dispensary that is made into drops or tinctures. Tinctures mean that there's alcohol involved. Just when we talk about from the pharmacy world, that's what we do and how we formulate a tincture. And there's also a difference between hemp seed oil, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So when you talk about the lung cancer patients, and again, there's clinical evidence, clinical trials need to be run on using CBD for lung cancer patients. As we were chatting earlier, there is a few case reports out there where people have used CBD. Now it's unclear if they were just using a plain CBD or THC and CBD, which I think it probably was, but CBD potentially or has a potential to alter the immune environment and stimulate a response. So where that may be helpful is in patients with non-small cell lung cancer, because it seems to be more responsive to immunotherapy. So it might be more likely to help that population. But again, that needs to be sorted out in clinical trials to really see what the effects are and what the side effects are. And I certainly, as a patient, would not stop my chemotherapy or immunotherapy or radiation or surgery just to take a cannabinoid. I would definitely talk to their oncologist, their clinical pharmacist that they're working with in the oncology environment to help navigate that scenario.
So a lot of people, they may not necessarily know the difference between THC, CBD. So let's toss in another variable here. Hemp, you mentioned it earlier, doctor. So what is that difference between hemp seed oil and CBD oil?
So by definition, hemp can contain no more than 0.3% of THC by dry weight. So that's an important distinction. And it's important for consumers to know because, again, this is a very unregulated science. So what's on the label necessarily isn't what's in the body, and consumers need to do research. They need to go to the product website, look for a certificate of analysis, because there should be a batch number on whatever they have purchased. Or if they go to a dispensary, they can ask for a certificate of analysis. Sometimes you'll find that with hemp seed oil can be, that's a food product, right? And it contains no CBD if it's pure hemp seed oil. And again, it can contain no more than 0.3% THC. So oftentimes, not often, sometimes you can see that a product might be labeled as CBD oil, but it's really hemp seed oil. So hemp seed oil is going to be a lot cheaper than a CBD oil. And that's a big distinction. So if consumers are thinking, wow, I just found a really great sale, a lot of times it might not be a really great sale. It might be that it's really hemp seed oil as opposed to CBD oil. So people need to kind of do their research and figure out what's really in the bottle. And that goes with THC as well. So oftentimes something is labeled as being a CBD product, but there could be a lot of THC in a particular product. It's just not listed on the label.
But is it also true that hemp seed oil could have the CBD that it says on the label? Because CBD, that's one of the ways that they can get the CBD to you. Is that correct as well? So
Yes.
really you have to look at that COA, the certificate of analysis, to really know what you're getting.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So hemp can be CBD can be extracted from hemp or from the cannabis plant. So yeah, that great point. You just don't want people to be paying a lot of money and just be getting the hemp seed oil. So not made from the plant, made from the seed. So there's a big distinction. Right. So and that's what makes it more the hemp seed oil, again, just from the seeds, should not contain as much of your CBD.
Got it. So question for you, can CBD really treat, or we've even read cure cancer, or is it more that it can relieve symptoms? Where are we on all of that? Because the headlines, I think, are very confusing for a lot of people.
I would say at this point that we can only say that it relieves symptomatology. We can't say really a cure. We can't even say that cannabis cures anything, but it treats symptoms. So you're right. The headlines are very misleading. Until we have that evidence, it's really, it's a slippery slope. So we can only say that it treats symptomatology.
To your knowledge, doctor, are there any CBD related small cell lung cancer clinical trials or non-small cell lung cancer clinical trials that people can get involved with?
There are, and I would recommend that people go to clinicaltrials.gov. So all clinical trials will be listed on those particular websites, and that's a good way to weed out whether or not it's a reputable trial or not. But again, at this point, they're not really taking people off of their therapies, traditional therapies. They're using this as an adjunct with those trials.
Dr. Bainbridge, Lung Cancer Foundation of America is all about research, but we all do our own research on Dr. Google, as we know. And so when you look up lung cancer and CBD, that first page has a couple of case studies on it. But when you read the case study, there's really only one person in that case. How much how much should you take when you read something like that? How much information should you say, oh, this is something I can really use, as opposed to, well, this is interesting and it might add to my body of information, but I don't know whether it would be the same for me.
Right. And so I think you hit the nail on the head. This is very interesting. Let me take this back to my oncologist and see what they think about this. Is it reputable? Is it not? So I think it's like, oh, this is interesting. And who knows where we'll be in another 10 or 20 years from now. Will we be saying something completely different? I think that it's just really interesting that we're actually studying what looks interesting in many circumstances, and that may lead us to finding answers to these questions.
And have any of the CBD products with CBD oil been approved by the FDA to treat anything at this point?
Yes, there's one CBD product that is plant derived. It comes from the cannabis plant. It's extracted and it's purified. And that particular product is cannabidiol, and it goes by the brand name Epidiolex. Epidiolex is approved by the FDA and descheduled by the DEA, so it's not scheduled, and it's approved for specific types of epilepsy. So Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, Dravet syndrome, and tuberous sclerosis complex. So very specific types of epilepsy that it's approved for by the FDA. And the good thing about having a product that has gone through rigorous clinical trials is that they look at side effects. They look at monitoring and what potential monitoring needs to happen when that product comes to market. They're looking at drug-drug interaction. So oftentimes I go back to that package insert and look for that data that the clinical trials has given us. And it also tells us about dosing. So the dosing for those types of epilepsy is much higher than consumers would probably be using CBD for if they wanted to sleep better or for anxiety. And it's not approved for those indications at this point, but that is the only plant-derived CBD product that we have on the market.
So I think you may have answered at least a little bit of my next question, doctor, but what are some of the dangers of using CBD oil? We know it's legal under the Farm Bill. And what types of side effects might people encounter when using CBD oil?
Well, and when we talk about legalization, we have to be careful with that too. So the Farm Bill of 2018 did allow hemp 0.3% THC to be in those particular products. So cannabidiol or whatnot. So we have to be careful because it's still federally, cannabis is federally illegal because it falls under that DEA 1. But the side effect profile that we see with CBD, which is usually why people take CBD, is for sedation. So we know that patients will become sedated with CBD or sleepy. So that is a side effect that we see. We also can see that there is gastrointestinal issues that we can see with those CBD products. So when we're talking about nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, those are all side effects. I initially thought it was the oils that they were in because they're very lipophilic and easy to get into solution by using an oil. But now I think we have figured out that it is really a toxicity of the CBD or an effect, a side effect of the CBD. The other thing that we can see with CBD is that it can increase liver function. tests. So it can affect the liver, and obviously age extremes are going to be more affected by some of the liver components. So, very old, very young, everyone else it's variable, but those are the common side effects that we see with CBD.
It's interesting. I was talking to a doctor who said he used the acronym PAIN when he thought about what CBD could help with from a symptomatic standpoint, which the P being pain, the I being insomnia, the A being anxiety, and the N being nausea. What do you think of that?
Well, it's interesting. I've not heard that acronym used with CBD, but usually when we think of pain, we think of a little THC combination with the CBD. So jury's still out. If you look at the clinical trials that are out there, they're all over the board. But most of the positive, like neuropathic pain trials were THC and CBD. So I think those are really or something to keep in mind. And I think with nausea, I also think of more of a THC component. It could be a THC and CBD type effect. So we do know that CBD will decrease some of the side effects that we see that are unwanted with THC. And then they tend to play well in the sandbox together. So they work well together for many things.
So if I was interested in finding out more and wanted to go and purchase a CBD product, where would I go? Where would you suggest that people go so that they feel like they're getting good information and that they can find out the latest information as well?
So I would actually start with asking whatever area you're in. I would probably start with your pharmacist or practitioner and ask what they tend to use. So there's natural medicine database. Oftentimes people can access that. Sometimes they can't access that. But I think that's a good resource. And I think their pharmacist can be a really good resource in that scenario. I would try and stay away from Dr. Google. And especially if you're looking at chat rooms or, this is how Jackie felt on this particular product. So this is what I think that you need to use. And I think many clinicians are very accepting of some of the continuing medical education courses that are ongoing. So, just pushing the resources onto the clinician so that they can learn more about it in a bias-free atmosphere. There are also we just started at the University of Colorado a few years ago, started a CE program for medical or healthcare providers. And it's like an 8-week course. So there's one course on oncology, a couple courses on neurology, different areas or different disease states that patients are consuming cannabis products for, alleviating the symptomatology, that clinicians, and it's an easy program to use since a lot of it is pre-recorded and then there's a live session because it's CE. And then there are programs. We also have a master's level course that's for anyone holding a bachelor degree, which is a really fascinating type course because you get people that are coming from the cannabis industry, or you have people who are clinicians. So I think our practitioners now are more open to learning about what is known and what isn't known about cannabis or specific cannabinoids. When you're talking about dosing, side effects, how to monitor the products, because all of those things are important. And obviously we should treat these products as drugs or medications, because we know that they interplay with other medications. They alter the metabolism. We know that there are side effects that we see much different from THC to CBD. We know that there are side effects, and oftentimes we use those products for their side effects.
You know, Jordan, there is so much we still don't know about CBD and lung cancer, but through research, we are learning more every day. Thank you to Dr. Jacquelyn Bainbridge with the Skaggs School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences at the University of Colorado Anschutz Medical Campus. Make sure to subscribe to the Hope with Answers Living with Lung Cancer podcast. You'll be notified every time a new episode is available. So visit us online at lcfamerica.org, where you can find more information about the latest in lung cancer research, new treatments, and more. You can also join the conversation with LCFA on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.